Small disclaimer before the video starts, this is a review of the story expansion for Tales of Arise Beyond the Dawn. This is not a review of the base game. I do have a review for the base game though, so if you want to check that out, I'll leave it at the top of the description, but in this video I will be talking about the expansion alone, and while I will not be spoiling the expansion, as this is a spoiler-free review, I will assume that you've played and beaten the main game. But with that aside, thanks for watching and enjoy the video. Tales of Arise Beyond the Dawn is a story expansion that I personally never expected, but when it was announced at the most recent State of Play, I was super excited for it. I only beat the game in January of 2023 this year, but I said goodbye to it. I said goodbye to its world, to its characters, to this experience, and while it was a joy to return, and while I personally did really enjoy coming back to this game, I'm honestly not sure on whether or not I can recommend this DLC for the price that it is right now to everyone. And since I made a spoiler-free review on the base game of Tales of Arise, I thought I'd do the same now for Beyond the Dawn, kind of as a small companion video, so to say. And if you're interested in more videos like this on JRPGs or PlayStation games, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate the support, but without further ado, let's talk about this expansion. Beyond the Dawn is a story that takes place 1 year after the main events of the game, but it is set before the end credit scene to kind of frame it in the timeline. The world of Dana and Rena are fused into one now, and the people living on this world are still trying to get used to this change. If you know anything about the relationship between these two groups of people, you can already guess that this was never gonna go down smoothly. The Renans are still feeling very superior to the Danans, while the Danans still bear a grudge against those that used to rule them, but yet they're forced to live together now. And the narrative of this DLC does a phenomenal job at exploring this concept. From the side stories to the main quest to just talking to NPCs around the world, everyone in every single realm has their opinion on the merging of the worlds, and they have their opinion on Alphen and the main cast, as they of course caused this event. And seeing how the world is dealing with all of this is really interesting. And in return, our main cast of course also have their own feelings on this matter, and they of course deal with this in their own ways. The characters are actually phenomenal here, to probably nobody's surprise. All of them shine and they really show their growth from the main game. I would often finish a cutscene from a side quest or a main quest and think to myself like, damn, these same characters from earlier in Tales of Arise would never act like this, and it's just really nice to see their growth now. The other characters would even comment on it during gameplay as well. Things like Isara talking to Dohalim about how much Law or Rinwell matured was a really sweet moment, and that talk also just randomly happens while exploring the world after finishing a random side quest. So moments like these are sprinkled throughout the whole experience, and they're just really nice. There is a time skip of a year between the events of the DLC and the base game, and in that time skip the cast was actually separated as well for most of it, even though some of them like Law or Rinwell would meet up every now and then. But for the group in general, it is a reunion, just like it is a reunion for us the player coming back to this game. And I think that that's where this DLC shines. It's not trying to tell this insane narrative, it's not trying to top the original experience, but it's an epilogue story that puts the world and characters front and center, showing how far they've all come and how they've grown from their experiences. But they're also going through a small new arc in this story. Law, for example, is trying to live up to the legacy left behind by his father, or Alphen is struggling with the fact that everyone just sees him as the blazing sword now. Alphen's story was definitely my favorite here. I won't spoil anything of course, but he has some fantastic moments of self-reflection, talking about what it means to be a hero, what it means to be the blazing sword, from both the perspective of himself, his friends, the Danans and the Renans, while also thinking about his relationship with Shion, and it's all really nicely done. But that's of course not all, as there's also a new character introduced in this expansion. Her name is Nazamil. She's the daughter of both a Renan Lord and a Danon, making it so that she doesn't really fit in anywhere in this newly created world, or in the old world for that matter. But of course it does make her fit in with our cast of characters. I won't go into too much detail here, as the main plot of Beyond the Dawn is focused on her and her relationship with the group. All I'll say is that she is a really interesting character. Just seeing her interact with the group and grow closer to them early on in the DLC was honestly really sweet, and it made for some nice moments. Her story also takes some interesting turns later on, and it goes into some interesting directions, but I of course won't be talking about that. If I had to give a criticism on the story of the DLC though, it would be about Nazamil, as I would have liked for her to have a little bit more screen time. I can't really talk about why or how, since I don't want to spoil the story, but while she is with the group for part of the DLC, I would have liked it for her to be with them for a bit longer, so that the things that happen later on in the DLC would carry a bit more weight. Don't get me wrong, what was here was solid, but I can't help but think that they could have just fleshed her out a little bit more. But in general, while the story might not reach the peaks of the base game, it doesn't have to, and it was definitely a story worth experiencing, as it faces our characters, both new and old, and this world with some very interesting ideas, while also just giving us some more time with them. Another small adventure before having to say goodbye again. And as I already mentioned a few times, these interesting ideas aren't only explored in the main story, but also in the side activities or in the side quests. And this DLC adds a lot of them. There are basically 4 categories to them now. You have the normal subquests, character subquests, EX quests, and the reconstruction quests. And all of these, besides for the normal subquests, are actually a new addition to the game. But at the same time, calling them real new additions wouldn't really be accurate. But that'll become clear as I talk more about them. From a story standpoint, the character and EX quests are easily the best ones though. As the name suggests, in the character quests, we focus on one of our main characters. On the map, these will also be marked with a little icon of the characters next to the quest icon, and that is then of course who that quest will be focusing on. These are a little bit longer than normal side quests, and just put one specific character in the spotlight. These quests can connect to their backstory, it can connect to something that was going on during the main game, it can connect to something that happened during the time skip, or even something that might be happening right now. And while normal subquests also have a lot of character stuff going on, like there's a new food competition quest similar to the pancake quest of the main game, these character quests do a lot more than just showing some sweet or wholesome character interactions. Like, a lot of what I said earlier about Law dealing with the legacy of his father actually takes place in his subquests, and that quest then even leads to a unique boss fight. And the EX quests are similar to this, but instead of being smaller stories, each focused on one character, the EX quests are part of one big subplot line about Alphen and Shion. I won't spoil the details of what's going on here again, but it is a really fun questline to experience, and even if you're the type of person that usually skips side quests, I highly recommend doing this one, because it is just a great follow-up from the main game, and it kind of even feels like a main subplot to the DLC. But since it doesn't have anything to do with Nazamil, it makes more sense for them to frame it as a side quest, even though the character stuff that's going on here is basically main quest worthy. They're also marked in gold, by the way, so the game really puts an emphasis on them, as you really just don't want to miss them. And then you also have the final category of new quests, so to say, being the reconstruction quests. But these are basically the same as normal subquests. The only difference is that the world would change a little bit visually after you complete them, as, like the name suggests, you are helping with the rebuilding or the reconstruction of this world. And including the character quests, EX quests, normal subquests and reconstruction quests, the DLC adds 44 of them. Now, the story in most of them is pretty good. They have some nice character moments, some very good world world building, but most of your actual playtime will be spent quick traveling somewhere, picking up an item, killing a monster, and quick traveling back, which does get pretty tedious after some time. Especially in the way that they're paced or in the way that they're spread out throughout the game. I would often spend a few hours doing nothing but side quests, doing every quest available at that time, and as soon as I was done, I would move on to the next main story event, only for that main story event to be a single cutscene of maybe a few minutes, and after opening the map again, I would see a subquest icon in almost every single location. So the game really throws a lot of these at you. Story-wise, these do range from decent to great. There weren't really any that I thought were straight up bad, but sadly it is a fact that it's definitely quantity over quality with these, outside of the character and EX quests, of course. So outside of real story content, I would sadly say that this DLC is a little bit lacking or disappointing. There are no new combat abilities or arts, there are no new enemy types besides for the 2 new bosses, and there is not a single new area. That last one honestly being my biggest disappointment with this DLC, because with how beautiful this world is, I would have just loved to see a new area, no matter how small or no matter in which realm it would be placed. I would have just loved to explore a new location. Now, don't get me wrong, there are new dungeons, 3 to be exact, but they mostly feel very samey. They aren't the most interesting visual-wise, and they reuse a lot of assets from the main game. They are fun to explore though, it's just that visually they're not extremely standout, besides for the final one. I, of course, again, won't spoil what that dungeon does, but while it is still recycling a lot of content and a lot of visual aspects, it was definitely the best out of 3. I just wish that they did a bit more with the world in this DLC, as for one, not having a new area to explore is pretty disappointing, and while they do add some dungeons, these dungeons just felt like any other dungeon in the game, really. It wasn't as standout as, let's say, the post-game Otherworld dungeon, which was a really well-designed dungeon that threw new mechanics at you, and it kinda took you off guard with some of the puzzles that you had to solve. While here, it was just another dungeon. It wasn't a bad dungeon, it wasn't a fantastic dungeon, it was just another dungeon. And while that's fine, I guess I just was kind of expecting a bit more out of it. And while I did say that there are no completely new areas to explore, I do have to mention that they changed up the existing areas a little bit. They are still the same areas, so there's not really anything to explore necessarily, but they did put up some new decorations, they added some small structures, stuff like that, just to accommodate to the new situation of the world and to show that time did pass. It's nice to look at, and it's nice that they are visually different, but again, it's not really a change big enough that would warrant you exploring these places again. What they did add, however, are more character skits. And if you know me, you know that I just really love stuff like this. I don't know exactly how many there are, but they added a lot of them. And it was just so much fun to see these characters hang out again. From the small, meaningful things that they talk about, to the genuine good conversations that they have. It was just fun to spend more time with them. So again, story and character-wise, I basically have no problems with this DLC. The new main story was great, the character stuff was great, and the new character skits were also really fun. But I do have another small gripe with the DLC, and while this might not bother most players, as someone who platinumed or 100%ed the base game, I felt like I was never really making progress outside of the story. This DLC is separate from the main game, it has its own main menu, and it doesn't carry over your save file. All it does is check your progress, and it gives you some extra money or combat points or golden weapons that are pretty useless based on your progression of the main game, but none of your actual progress, like your level or your skills or your armor or your weapons, none of them carry over, causing you to basically retrace your progress from the main game. And this problem originates from the fact that the DLC does not add any new skills, armor sets, or weapons, which is already a shame in and of itself, but because of this they couldn't carry over any of your actual progress. Because if they did carry over your progression into the DLC, there would simply not be anything to unlock for people who 100%ed the game, besides for the one new weapon that they added for each character. But that's just a problem with this DLC. Why are there no new skills? Why are there no new weapons? They could have just carried over your unlocked and equipped skills, added 2 new skill panels to each character, so that people who 100%ed the game, like me, would have been able to buy the new skills, while the players that maybe stopped after just beating the story, they could have chosen between, do I want to buy the expansion skills, or do I want to buy the post-game skills that they didn't unlock yet? Same thing with the weapons. Why not just add 3 or 4 new weapons instead of making me craft the same ones again? Levels are a bit harder to balance though, since if you carry over your level, some players would be level 100 and other players would be level 50, so I get that they want to start everyone off at level 70, but that's just a number. I don't really care about that. My issue is mainly just that I was recrafting the same weapons, I was rebuying the same skills, and I was rebuying the same armor sets. And what kind of highlights this problem is that the other DLCs, as in the overpriced costume packs, they all add new skills. I know for a fact that in one of the DLC packs, in one of the many DLC packs, there is a group heal for Dohalim, but in the main game and in Beyond Dawn, Dohalim just doesn't have a group heal. So they have added new skills before, it's just that for some reason they'd rather add them into the overpriced costume packs compared to the main expansion. And I do say for some reason, but of course it's because they know that people will buy this expansion anyway, while with costume packs the stronger skills might just win some people over. But just them releasing like 20 plus costume packs, most of which include new active and passive combat skills, but then when they make a new story expansion, the main expansion of this game you could say, they don't include any of that stuff. And that just bothers me, so I wanted to bring it up again. I know that it's a small thing, but everything that I just mentioned, from adding new skills or new weapons or maybe even a new animation, just making it so that I'm not killing the same enemies to get the same material, to craft the same weapon, or to unlock the same skills, would have gone a really long way into making it feel like a continuation in more ways than just a narrative. So, in conclusion, whether or not this DLC is worth it for you really depends on what you want from this. Personally, even though I had a lot of gripes with it, I really like this DLC, because I am someone who values story and characters. I even love this DLC in a way. At points I was cheering on the characters, at other points the DLC got me a bit emotional, but at the same time I do think it's lacking. I got 100% on this DLC in basically 20 hours, but most of that time was doing side quests. Otherwise I would have probably beaten it in maybe 10 hours. There is just not enough new content from a gameplay perspective, as everything that is new is just recycled content, especially keeping in mind that this was released 2 full years after Tales of Arise, and it's priced at $30. The same price as Phantom Liberty or Future Redeemed, being more expensive than Burning Shores, The Old Hunters, or Intermission, while it has a lot less content than any of the expansions that I just mentioned. If this was cheaper, I would still have some of these issues, but they wouldn't matter as much as you get what you pay for. So I just think it's a bit overpriced. But all in all, because of what it does for the story and the characters, I can't say that I feel like I wasted my money. I was happy to spend more time with these characters, I was happy to be in this world again, and I was so happy that I got to go on another adventure with everyone. Plus, of course, even if a lot of the gameplay is recycled content, I do absolutely love this combat system, I absolutely love this world, so just having more Tales of Arise wasn't necessarily a bad thing for me, even if I expected a bit more for the price that they were asking. But I also can't say with certainty that you will feel the same way. If you love these characters, and if you love the idea of spending more time with them for a character-driven epilogue, then go for it. But if you're not insanely attached to them, and if you're just someone who enjoyed Tales of Arise and you want more of it, but you're also not dying to return, I would maybe wait for a small discount. But that's basically all that I had to say about the DLC. What do you all think? Did you play the DLC? Are you maybe holding out on it still? Because I have seen the internet in general be a bit mixed on this DLC, so I am just very curious to know what you all are thinking. So be sure to let me know in the comments, be sure to like the video, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you want more. All your support is greatly appreciated. But with that, I'm gonna end the video here. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.